This is Ken Klippenstein for The Intercept. Pensions for the deep state. Republicans push benefits for Air America, the CIA's secret Vietnam-era airline. And this is, if you're not familiar with Air America, it used to be called Civil Air Transport, and it was the CIA during the Vietnam War. They also, there was a civil war in Laos where we supported the one side, primarily the Hmong, or however you pronounce it, the militants there. We supported them through drug traffic. At minimum, we looked the other way of they were trafficking heroin and opium, and this is called the Golden Triangle. This is important. Like opium used to come from China, or first it came from India. The British dealt it to China. Then they started just growing it in China. Then the communists took over and they actually burned it all and they shut down the opium growing. So in the 50s, Peter Dale Scott's written about this, of course. The 50s, the CIA kind of supported the nationalist Chinese, the KMT, by looking the other way for heroin and opium trafficking. And then in Laos, they did the same thing. They looked the other way of their kind of guerrilla army that we put in the field. We financed them with drug trafficking. And Civil Air Transport, or later Air America, was, nobody disputes that it was bringing weapons to these guerrillas who were funding themselves almost entirely through drug trafficking, much of which ended up in the United States and contributed to, all those GIs on heroin and shit. But there is still dispute about Air America. The CIA airline was actually bringing heroin into the United States, was actually involved in the sale of heroin, or if not bringing it into the United States, just bringing it into Thailand, from which point it would, bringing it from the grow into Thailand, from which point it would go on to the United States. And I think it's not disputed that Air America was doing this, because Air America pilots were actually convicted of doing it. And you can actually, if you're interested, listener, you can watch, there's a Frontline PBS documentary that should be on YouTube called Drugs, Guns, and the CIA, which looks at kind of this history and, covers this period. But this Ken Klippenstein article, unfortunately, quotes this fraudulent historian named Tim Weiner, who was a New York Times is a New York Times journalist who had this infamous 1997 headline, which is "CIA finds no link between itself and the crack trade."
Yeah,
and this is a guy who's he goes around and he discredits any CIA role in the Kennedy assassination. He's a real limited hangout artist, and I was very disappointed. I'm like, why is Ken Klippenstein at The Intercept still disputing what is, at this point, established history? Because he quotes Tim Weiner to say that the entire idea that Air America was trafficking heroin or whatever is a quote-unquote canard, and he just attributes it to, quote, some rogue pilots. And it's like, no, this is an established fact. You can look at Alfred McCoy, you can look at Peter Dale Scott. These are serious researchers. If you don't believe me, check out their work. But it is an established fact that the CIA was keeping an army in the field through the drug traffic. And a lot of that was ending up in the United States. And you can kind of quibble about the details, but it's this is an established fact. And so despite my beef with that article, he does talk about, it's an interesting story that they have introduced the Representative Glenn Grothman, as a Republican of Wisconsin, as well as, I believe, Senator Marco Rubio from Florida. They've introduced a bill that would... it's called the Air America Act. It seeks to guarantee retirement benefits and official recognition for the 1,000 U.S. citizens who worked for the airline. Some would be included on the CIA's Wall of Stars, which memorializes agency employees who died in the line of service. And I'm quoting from the article, of course. Hired as covert operatives, Air America employees were not permitted to provide standard government forms and are unable to prove their federal employment status, which is necessary to qualify for benefits, for retirement benefits. And Congressman Grothman says, quote, "These patriots risked their lives fighting communism in the same way members of the Air Force did," when he announced the legislation. And this is so insane to me, where it's these guys were hired as covert operatives to smuggle drugs and to support a war, a drug proxy war. And now we're let's give pensions and benefits to the guys who were bringing fucking heroin into the United States, because I guess that's just kind of the way things have progressed now, where we're well, they were fighting communism doing that. And also we're going to have, apparently The Intercept is still going to lie about what they were actually doing there. And, it's and I'm sorry, I got very annoyed about this because I was in Seattle in January, and I've talked about my brother a lot. He's fent head. He's on the street. I called him or it spoke to him on the phone. I was like, "Are you going to come by?" It was freezing in Seattle. He just stayed on the street. He said he was going to come by, but he's like, he's an addict. He lies all the fucking time.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to see him, and it's like, it just really annoys me because it's like, I've read enough of the history where I know going back to even before Air America for decades.
Did Obama give him a phone?
Yeah, Obama did give him a phone, which he changes numbers a lot. I don't know if he trades it for, smack or whatever. But anyways, the point is, it's like going back decades now, the U.S. government has been complicit in, like, in my opinion, directly bringing drugs into the United States. But at minimum, nobody will deny that they've empowered all of these proxy armies and all of these drug mafias that got much more powerful because of their support from the U.S. government. Because the U.S. government said, hey, Laos, hey, Laotian, we'll let you sell heroin. We're going to look the other way because you're fighting communism. And that just creates a lot more heroin and creates a lot more addicts. And, and it's just fucked up that it's... that the history of it is still being denied in like a mainstream paper in like January 2024. And people just like, if you don't know this shit, the news is just going to fucking lie to you about it. And, so I don't know what the fuck Ken Klippenstein's doing, but I'm suspicious of the guy.
This is the biggest drug crisis we've ever had, right?
It's insane.
Right? It is. It's the worst, though. It's the worst the country's ever...
100,000 overdoses every year. And it's like, you can look at it, like, the total of, like, overdose deaths in the United States, 90% of it comes within the last 20 years. Like, if you just follow the entire data set, it's insane. And, most of that's because of fentanyl, but it's like, Jesus Christ, dude. Why isn't this just being talked about every day?
Yeah.
But, the good news is if you are listening to this and you are a CIA fentanyl dealer, in 60 years, they're going to get you a pension, even if you doing plausible deniability and pretending you're not working for the agency when you're bringing fentanyl into the country. There will be a senator fighting for you because you're fighting communism and terrorism and whatever else you're doing by poisoning the communities.
And some people just want, communism. Not us, because we're small business owners.
That's right.
We can provide for our families by doing ate myself some cum.
Yes. Yeah, it was Vang Pao, was a major general in the Royal Lao Army in Laos. He was a direct CIA contact involved in drug trafficking. And Seth Harp on Twitter says, the idea that Air America was smuggling heroin for profit may be an exaggerated distortion. And it's like, I don't know about that, but maybe. But who cares when no one can dispute that the right-wing Thai and Laotian forces backed by the CIA turned the Golden Triangle into the most abundant zone for heroin production in the world. So it's like, and this Intercept article doesn't mention that. So,
and so people who smuggle stuff in their assholes, in their asses, that's like, you're dealing with like shitty drug dealers. Right?
Yeah.
Because the CIA guys don't stick things in their ass when they're doing these things.
No, they just have a C-17 cargo plane.
Oh, my God. They should have to use their asses. That should be part of it. That's the only way they're gonna get the pension.
Right.
That's the only justifiable way you get a pension, is if they have to compromise their asses.